I didn't notice the pattern immediately. At first, it just felt like an occasional oversight. One Sunday, my sister-in-law mentioned she was hosting dinner. The next week, someone casually referred to last Sunday's roast. A few days later, I saw photos in the family group chat, long table candles, my husband's cousins laughing in the background. We hadn't been there. When my husband asked about it later, she smiled with that soft, apologetic tone people use when they believe the explanation is obvious. Sorry, it's just for close family. The phrase landed oddly. My husband nodded and didn't argue. He rarely did. What made it stranger was that close family seemed to include a rotating cast of people, cousins we barely knew, a neighbor from her street, once even her coworker, but never us. After the third or fourth time, the rhythm became clear. Sundays arrived. Around mid-afternoon, someone would post a message about dinner preparations. Later that night, photos appeared, wine glasses, plates of food, everyone gathered around her large dining table. Our Sundays became quiet by comparison. For a while, we stayed inside, trying to pretend the pattern didn't bother us. We'd eat late, watch television, and avoid checking our phones. The silence wasn't dramatic, just slightly heavy. One Sunday evening, my husband carried 2 plates outside to the backyard instead of the kitchen table. It wasn't a statement. The weather was warm and the house felt stuffy. We sat near the small patch of garden we'd been slowly fixing up, some herbs, a few tomato plants that never quite grew right. That was the first Sunday dinner in the garden. There was nothing special about it, just a small folding table and 2 chairs. But the air outside made conversation easier. We stayed there long after finishing our food, talking about work, about the tomatoes, about nothing important. The following Sunday, we did it again. It slowly became our habit. Instead of thinking about what we weren't invited to, we started planning small meals we could eat outside, sometimes grilled vegetables, sometimes leftovers, sometimes takeout eaten from paper containers. It wasn't meant to become anything. One evening, our neighbor, Mrs. Delgado, passed by the fence while walking her dog. She paused when she saw the table. "That looks nicer than eating inside," she said. We laughed and told her she was welcome to join us for a few minutes. She didn't stay long. But the next week she brought a small loaf of bread she had baked. A few Sundays later, my husband invited a coworker who lived nearby and didn't have family in town. Another week, Mrs. Delgado brought her daughter along. The gathering stayed small and unstructured. People came by for half an hour or stayed longer. Sometimes it was still just the 2 of us, but something had shifted. Our Sundays no longer felt like empty spaces waiting to be filled by someone else's invitation. The garden slowly changed too. We added string lights across the fence. My husband built a slightly larger table after realizing the folding one wasn't enough when 4 people showed up at once. No one called it an event. It was simply dinner outside. The first time a relative wandered over was almost accidental. My husband's cousin Aaron had come to the neighborhood for my sister-in-law's dinner and parked down the street. As he walked past our house, he noticed the lights in the garden and the sound of people talking. He leaned over the fence. "Wait, you guys are having dinner too." We laughed and told him to come in for a minute. He stayed for nearly an hour. The next Sunday, he stopped by again before heading to my sister-in-law's house. Then another cousin did the same. They'd sit for a while, talk, sometimes eat something, then leave. Word spread the quiet way things do in families. Apparently, people liked the garden. It wasn't formal. No seating chart. No expectation that you stay the whole evening. You could simply show up. I didn't think much about what that meant until a few weeks later at a birthday gathering for my husband's mother. The whole family was there, including my sister-in-law. Conversations drifted between small groups the way they always did. At one point, she was describing her Sunday dinners to someone who hadn't attended yet. "We keep it small," she said lightly. "The just close family." The phrase floated through the room, but something was different this time. A couple of cousins exchanged brief glances. Someone mentioned the garden dinners offhandedly. "Oh, yeah, we stopped by their place last Sunday first." Another relative nodded. The garden's really nice. No one said anything confrontational. There was no argument. But the sentence, just close family, didn't carry the same quiet authority it once had. There were other Sundays now. Later that evening, my sister-in-law approached me briefly near the kitchen counter. Her voice was polite, almost curious. "I've been hearing about your backyard dinners." I nodded. "They're nothing big, just whoever happens to come by." She studied me for a moment, as if trying to understand something she hadn't expected. "Well," she said eventually, "that sounds nice." That was all. The following Sunday, our garden table had 5 chairs filled. The week after that, only 2 again. And I realized something I hadn't understood before. For months we had waited to be included somewhere else. But belonging, it turned out, wasn't something another person could fully control. Sometimes it started with 2 chairs in a quiet backyard, and whoever chose to sit down.